Today we're speaking with Kavita Ashok from Delhi. Hi, Kavita. How are you?
Hello, yeah, I'm absolutely in good health.
Oh, that is good to hear. And it is very nice to connect with you. We have been in touch before and speaking about, in fact, we're speaking about air pollution in Delhi. We spoke in 2020. So
Yes.
we have 13 points. I have 13 questions. I don't know if we get all of them. I think 45 minutes from now on would be probably a good idea.
Yes.
Here we have 11:15 in the UK.
Mhm.
What's your time in Delhi?
It's 4:15,
Okay.
4:15 p.m. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So we have, you want to talk about air pollution in Delhi, and we'll talk about other environmental
Yes.
problems. And let's just start off straight away. Uh, we spoke about air pollution in 2020. What is different this time?
There is nothing different. It's just a very sad situation that we are back to square one. Every year, from March to October, the government and the authorities which are to be taking and solving this air pollution problem, especially the state government, are not taking any action. And as soon as winter sets in, say by time of our festivities in October, November, when Diwali comes, and then we have a stubble burning problem in winter which comes at the same time as Diwali,
Yes,
that's
yes, I
when
remember.
all hell breaks loose, and everyone starts screaming and shouting and creating mess that there's air pollution. But the truth is, as an environmentalist and activist working on the ground, I believe that the situation always existed throughout the year. So why every winter we have to create a hue and cry? And from 2020 to 2021 there has been no improvement. In fact, it was so bad this year that the Supreme Court of India had to barge into the problem between the states and the center and the neighboring states to try and find a solution.
Well, are there any solutions?
Not yet. Not yet. We are still struggling. There are minor things which have been done, but as I understand the air pollution problem quite a little deeply, so I feel that it's not going to help, because last minute stitches are not going to help us, because things like stopping entry of trucks into the capital, or shutting down schools, making people sit at home and work from home. So all these they're going to make a very marginal difference, because the real culprit are the industrial emissions, and the brick making factories that we have,
Yes, 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 of course.
the stubble burning, the construction work which is unmonitored, traffic rules and regulations have to be modified. So just doing a last minute thing like saying, okay, children won't go to school, how is it going to solve the air pollution problem? I fail to understand.
Okay, yes, of course, air pollution is just one limb of the whole problem
Yeah.
of climate change and climate breakdown. And we just had in Glasgow, in Scotland, we had COP26. Do you think
Yes.
it was a success or a failure?
I want to start with this, that whatever was promised in, as I heard someone say, whatever was promised in Paris, I think was not delivered in Glasgow, because we had big hopes about the promises that were made in Paris, and people thought, all of us, like activists and people working on climate, even very revered people like you who have such a vast experience and knowledge of climate change and action. I'm sure everyone agrees to it that whatever we thought would happen, it fell a little short in its delivery.
Yes, I mean, at the end of the COP26, China and India seem to have watered down the pledges. Just at the last minute, it was watered down, especially in relation to coal.
Yeah.
What's your take on this?
I've just done a little study to understand, and I think it's very, very wrong. and to blame just China and India, because we are developing countries. The coal problem does not only exist with us, it exists in more developed nations. Look at US, what are they doing? They're still sanctioning. I read something in Mexico, they've sanctioned more leases for oil and coal. So how is it, how are they leading by example? How are they leading by example? And secondly, India and China have said that, let's don't make it like a total phase out. Let us do a phase down. So I think which is very sensible, because even our Prime Minister at COP26 said we are not ready to phase out, we are ready to phase down. So I think that's the way to go. You can't do a 1 day cut, chop and serve. It can't be a cut, chop, serve thing.
Well,
It has
do
to
we
go.
have the time? Do we have the time to phase down? Some saying we are in an emergency. We need to really phase it out. And no, of course, China, India. There is Australia, big coal exporters. That is
Yes.
certainly a problem. But I mean, can we not have no coal within the next 10 years, perhaps?
Yes, I would prefer that we have other sources of energy, green energy. Look at solar energy and renewable water. There are wind. So there are other options. So I think instead of just blaming each other, whether China is a villain or India is a villain or UK is a villain, it's better to, sort of try and make the transition from coal to cleaner fuel. I think we should focus on that instead of saying phase down and phase out.
What about some people say there should be an annual. I mean, if we want to keep on track with Paris, with the Paris Accord, some people say there should be maybe annual audits. Where are we? Who is on the way? I mean, it seems to be too easy to go to net zero in 2030, 2050, and to be fully on clean energy. But the temptation is there to do nothing. And then a year before 2049, to want to reduce our fossil fuel burning and coal burning, and that is not achievable. So shouldn't we have an annual audit? If we have to go 100% by 2050, then maybe by next year we'll have to go 20% and then 40%. And what do you think?
I think an annual audit is an excellent idea, but I don't advocate an annual meeting, because if you see this time, the kind of deviations we've had, people talking of climate change were riding flying private jets to the meeting. So there was a lot of criticism, if in the media also about it. So
yes,
and
that is
all sorts of jets, all sort of lavish meat, and whatever we talk of carbon emissions and footprint, everything was happening there. So I think annually, I don't want people to meet annually. It's going to create more disaster for the environment. But yes, annual audit is very, very welcome, because that's the need of the hour. We need to see what each of all of us, I mean, each country is doing. We need an audit.
That sounds very, very sensible. It doesn't have to be a COP 27 or 28, yes. 29, where so many. Yes, and I mean, if anybody flies to these meetings in their private jets instead of the regular airlines, then that is absolutely hypocrisy.
But that's what happened. Yeah, this is what happened.
Yes,
this time.
Yes, it does, and it has. But I mean, these things can be done online, like we're talking online. There is no need of physically flying in. Yes. Well, let's move on. I mean, as the world is heading towards irreversible tipping points, what can we do to stop it? What needs to be done immediately? I mean, there are many deforestation and extinction of species, and there are many points. Is there anything what could be done immediately?
Because we've just spoken of coal, so I think the first is to put a total ban on, maybe some way we have to find how everyone is how every political, leaders willingly ready to use cleaner energy, switch the fuel. Because see, like for example, in India, we are like planning now, we are in the planning thing, and it's slowly coming into the capital city also, that within the next few years, all vehicles will move from diesel, petrol to electric. we'll have stations and everything, but we don't have the infrastructure ready as yet. So I can't promise you, sitting on behalf of India, that soon we'll all be on electric, because no, we all cannot, everyone cannot even switch to electric. Our vehicles are not ready, and a poor man in India cannot afford to ward off his, throw off his diesel vehicle and buy an electric. So it'll take time. This is a transition phase. So I think, firstly, I would like to say, let's work more on solar, because it's a very, very promising field of energy.
India is in a very wonderful position with solar, isn't it?
Yes, of course. We are doing good work in solar, because the state which I come from, Rajasthan, is the pioneer in solar now. We have industries working on solar. We have, small artisans working on solar energy. So it's like that state is an ideal state that everybody else is looking up to, that how solar can be used in every household, how solar can be used with artisans and weavers. So, everything has to go to the ground level. It has to reach the poorest artisan. It has to reach the poorest man who's working. Only then can you say we have a solar state. Otherwise, only putting solar panels on rich bungalows and saying, oh, we have the heat, a house is heated with solar and all, that is very arbitrary calculation of the country switching to solar. So I think it has to go to the ground level. Then sorry.
I always liked this idea, and that has not been discussed, that has not been spoken about, rather than having huge solar places. Why not having an individual energy that makes people independent with the energy on the roof, solar panel on the roof, straight into their own use, a windmill on every house's roof. Wouldn't that makes us independent, not depending on big companies?
That's right, because that just reminds me that whenever I travel to, places near Amsterdam, so I always see these lovely windmills. And as a little girl, I always used to think, I wish I have a house like that with a windmill. I didn't know in the coming years I'd be working on the same thing. I'd be working on environmental issues and advocating people to use wind energy, and, instead of using other things. So, sometimes what happens is that there's this inner voice, it makes you connect to what you're doing. So that's a little offhand. But yes, wind energy, solar, and India is like pioneering in solar. We are doing very well in solar. Second thing I want to talk about is plantation. We need to plant more trees. Everyone just goes on with this spree of deforestation. Even our best of forest in India and even other countries, they're just being chopped for urbanization and making some silly concrete buildings. I think forestation we need to plant more trees. And as I always, tell everyone, please plant at least 5 trees in your life. It's not a big thing. You have a long life. If you're living in for 60 years, you can plant 1 tree per year, still you'll have years behind. So forestation. Then of course,
yes, wonderful.
Water is, thank you. Water is a big challenge, because see, our rivers are so toxic. I'm not talking of only India. So many places, you see, even Thames once upon a time had become so dirty. They had to really do a very excellent cleaning job at it, right? If I'm not mistaken. And now we have our 2 Indian rivers which are like so dirty. One of them is in Delhi, the Yamuna. There's a restoration plan and there's so many promises. But I think water war is going to be the next thing. So we have to be very, very vigilant about solving the water pollution problems also. So energy, water, then forestation, and also I think, of course, conservation of biodiversity when it comes to wildlife and species which are diminishing and depleting. So I think it's an overall plan, but the political will has to be very clean and clear. Until unless I say, if you have a green and clean political will, we can't make this happen.
Wonderful. Yes, I mean, I'm happy you touched on that deforestation. Now there has been talk about that the Amazon, which is the lungs of the world, the Amazon rainforest, it is on the tipping point of actually producing carbon rather than absorbing it. So this deforestation is a very, very important point. And you made it so clear with everyone should plant 5 trees in his lifetime or more. And I mean, especially Brazil there is so much deforestation for what? It is for cattle breeding and soy planting for cattle feed and in massive, because there is demand increasing demand for beef all over the world, and especially also China. I mean, this, beef consumption is seen as a standard of luxury, of advancement, like in the Western countries. So if China wants to also, and people they want to also come to that standard, if everybody wants to be on a meat-based diet like here in the West, then there will be nothing left of the Amazon.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I am very happy to say that I've always been a vegetarian, and in between for a few months I go vegan also. So that is because I'm able to. I have a strong will, and I totally believe that at least let some of us come forward and make some changes in our lifestyle and food habits, because what is on your plate is what you're doing to the environment around you. If I'm eating a salad, I'm doing something else. I'm contributing in a very, very small way. Everyone feels it's a small step, but it's not a small step. If crores of millions of people are going to take this small step, it's going to become a huge leap. So I think switching back to switching to vegetarian is a very good idea. I'm not talking of as you mentioned to me once, fake environmentalists who are making promises just on COP26, that occasion that, okay, we are all vegetarian. But you have to keep that promise. Remember, whoever said they are vegetarian, turning vegetarians have to keep it. Even if you're not turning vegetarian, at least try to cut the consumption. So that's also going to help a lot. Yeah.
Yes, that would be, people do consider that. They call that flexitarian. So they're cutting down rather 5 times meat in the week. They're cutting it down to 3 times, which is all on the right track.
Yeah,
but I mean, it has been calculated that meat consumption and its production, including the feed, which is acres after acres of soya planted, which is then fed to the cattle, and what to speak of the majority of fish caught in the oceans goes for cattle feed. That people, we can have our meat consumption. I call it not vegetarian. That seems to be a bit divisive. I say generally plant-based diet.
Yes.
I have been on a plant-based diet since over 40 years. Yes, without compromise, absolutely strict, and I couldn't imagine anything else. I mean, it appears also there are speakers and commentators on the environment and involved with the COP, but on a meat-based diet. Is that not a bit of hypocritical?
Of course, it's hypocritical. You have to lead by example. So I can't, throw plastic all around the city and then talk of plastic pollution. I can't.
Absolutely.
I can't have a vehicle which is emitting so much of the black muck and and then tell people about air pollution. So I think if I have to lead by example, firstly, it's very correct, because if people are going to look up to you, you have to be their ideal hero, or please at least I think we should only make promises which we can keep. So even if it's a small change, if you can make 1 iota of a change, kindly promise only 1 iota. I see political leaders even in COP26 making huge promises, which even when they were speaking, we knew this is not going to happen. So rather have a leader who speaks little and delivers more. That's what is the need of the hour.
People don't realize the gravity of, I mean, even a year ago, nobody dared to speak about meat consumption, a plant-based diet. Nobody, it was never in the news. Now it's coming up a little bit. It has been estimated that meat consumption is responsible for more than, on carbon, more than all the transport emissions, including shipping and aviation together. Well, that is a big, big figure.
It's a big figure, but if we speak this, if we share this with the people who are eating meat, they would hate to agree to it, because they're all climate deniers. They believe climate disaster is not their thing, because they're not responsible. So I think awareness of citizens is something I really work upon, because unless we understand our social responsibility, that the climate change or climate the conservation of the planet is everyone's responsibility, just not yours and mine, only then we will see a real change happen.
Generally, people agree on climate restriction measures, but nobody wants to change their personal lifestyle. That's a problem. They want climate mitigation measures, but they want to just carry on consumption, overconsumption, as of now, and that is not possible.
See, I believe that there is a big thing which can make a difference, and that is consumerism. If the consumer can demand, say, even say no to a plastic cup at a coffee shop and say, no, I'm not going to take this. Do you have something else which you can serve me in? Even a small statement like this can bring the change in that whole cafeteria. So much awareness can happen. But someone has to have that feel from inside and the courage to speak up. Same thing happens with fashion. We go and we shop. There was Black Friday. Oh my God, crazy shopping must have happened on Black Friday, right? So instead of that, we try to advocate, please try to reuse, please try to repeat what you're wearing, recycle, reuse. And, and there is no shame in wearing something for the 20th time. I don't know whether it's a man or a woman. So all these things, these are consumer awareness. So consumer, believe it or not, has a big role in playing. Whatever marketing is done to us through advertising and on television, we should be conscious. We should be aware that we're not supposed to be swayed by every marketing skill, trick in the book. So I think we have to make our own calls. Whatever product, whether it's a tinned, fish coming to you from across the world, look at the transportation cost, look at the carbon emission used. So I think eat local, eating local, eating organic, buying local stuff, buying less. All these are little things which everyone can make in their kitchen and their home.
That sounds very doable and promising, to revive the local economy, because as the world continuously increases the carbon emission, even now during lockdowns, it has maybe a little bit of a standstill, but it's still increasing more than even before the lockdowns, the carbon emissions. Do you think the Paris Accord of 1.5 degrees centigrade is still a realistic goal? Yesterday I read an article. Someone was saying it's impossible with what we're doing at the moment that we reach 1.5. It is much more likely 2, 3, and even 4 degrees, and that would be absolute disaster. Or let's put it like that, as Greta Thunberg is saying, everybody's talking about climate change, but nobody is treating it as an emergency. And she said the Glasgow COP26, it was just blah, 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 just a greenwash. And big companies have been, 500 big polluting companies have been lobbying there. And what is going to happen?
Greenwashing is a very realistic term now and being used widely by all climate activists and environmentalists and people who are conscious. But it is so true that look at big corporates. Everywhere in the world, we are so miserable. We can't tap them, we can't punish them, we can't fine them because they run the economy. So the government also never, there's no trapping these people and putting a stop to these industries. So I think it's in every country, and these are big multinationals. It's very, very difficult to shut them down. We all know the names; they are the same everywhere. The whole globe is using the same product. So I think it's right when a person says that. That's why I think every little citizen, every consumer sits back and say it's not my fault, because he says this cold drink is available throughout the world. This burger I'm eating always. This is a tin thing coming to my home from Australia, from China, from Egypt. So everything is available to me. How am I at fault? So I think a political will is going to play the most important part. Seriously, I'm telling you, even more than individual awareness, the big change has to begin from the top. For the little change, we are working for the little change on the ground level. People like you and me are working for the changes on the ground level. But there are bigger factors which can only, come into existence when the political leadership takes control of it. So the corporations have to be tapped.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It is one thing, you just mentioned plastic. It is one thing that everybody becomes conscious, but the plastic producers, and you know my article of the plastic tap on our
Yes.
website. That I mean, I give always the example: you come home and your kitchen is flooded because you left the tap running. What would you do first? Take a mop and starting mopping up, which is everybody is collecting their own plastic, which is useful. But I mean, wouldn't you turn off the tap first? So this big Shell and others, they're producing huge amounts of plastic. In fact, they have moved their investment from fuel for transport because they know very well that's going to change. There will be electrified transport. They move all that investment into plastic production, and that has increased many, many times and still increasing. So don't we need to somehow turn off that plastic tap and mopping up at the same time?
I've read your article, very, 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 to the point. It touches the real nerve of the problem, the turning off the plastic tap. I think it's very, very amazing. I've read it, and I think that what pains me most is the microplastics also. It's everywhere
Yes.
in the food. Microplastics in your tea. It's found in the placenta of pregnant women. It is found in little children. It's found in the fish in the ocean. It's everywhere. What are we doing to our children, and what are we doing to our health? So it's not just what plastic you see in a cup or a aeroplane. It's also what is coming inside in our food. So if we ignore this now, I think the human body is already getting so much plastic. I read somewhere that you're eating as much as a the like a card, like suppose say the card that you use in the ATM, you're using like a credit card. That much plastic is going into our stomachs. So I mean,
Yes.
if over a lifetime that's the kind of microplastic I'm going to eat, what's going to happen to my organs? But I think awareness about this microplastic is very less, and we need to work on that. Besides, I work on no plastic pollution campaign. I will have to include microplastics in my campaign from now on.
Yes, yes, microplastic even on the top of the Himalayas, it has been
Yes.
found by the wind everywhere. Well, that brings us actually to the point. The whole world economic system is based on continuous growth, but the resources are not growing. Or as many activists saying, we have only one planet Earth. There is so much exploitation of minerals, of oil, of gas, and so on, forests and trees. And so can that current capitalist economic model actually still stand? Do we not need anything, a change? Otherwise, extinction of species, including the human species. Basically, do we need system change? And you hear that from activists, system change, not climate change. Yes, because climate change is very much linked to the growth paradigm of the system we are in.
Yes,
What do you think?
I do agree with you, because I think we need a total revamp. We need a revamp of the whole system. Whether it comes to, I would like to say, let's look at sustainable living. I think the whole system has to change, so that whole life is, we need to switch to sustainable eating, our lifestyle, fashion, and food, farming, that is agriculture. Everything has to work on the concept of sustainability. Biodiversity has to be maintained, and we have to see that even the quality of the soil is deteriorating. So what about forest? What about agriculture? It's not just one thing. Let's not just pinpoint on industry. When it comes to urbanization, everything is affected. When you're chopping down trees, you're affecting the air. When you're doing crops out of turn, you're making rotation of crops, you're ruining the soil. Soil erosion is happening. The quality of the soil is deteriorating. Of course, the planet is ours and we just have one. We have to understand. So I think political leaders have to take the lead, and there has to be strong I think, understanding between the nations. We have to stop the blame game of India, China, UK, US, or whatever, Australia. No, we don't have to do that, because ultimately this is the planet we all have to live in. So better live harmoniously and live longer.
Yes, of course, there is also the big issue of climate justice. You hear everywhere climate justice. Um, the previous colonies, including India or Kenya and others, so much has been taken out. And climate justice, I mean, what does it mean? There were promised billions of support annually to help those countries to come to a standard where they can actually take care of the environment to help them.
Mm-hmm.
But that promise has been broken. And some saying that promise was years ago. Some saying that should be backpaid with interest. I mean, we have a situation where these former colonies have been exploited for 100 years and more. And then now they're getting loans to get back on their feet. And they're still getting exploited, but now they're getting loans with interest. I mean, shouldn't at least that interest be cancelled immediately?
Yes, absolutely. What aches my heart a lot lately is, how we are, treating the tribals. You know, look at the way, in the name of expansion and urbanization, we have reached the forest, to the depth of the forest, and we are clearing them. We are pushing away the tribals, those people who've been living there. We are crushing that civilization, their culture, and man is reaching everywhere. But it's very sad, because you are ruining the forest, you're ruining the soil, you're ruining the culture, you're displacing those people. They have nowhere to go. They're losing their livelihoods, whatever their way of living was. So you're not only ruining just the economic part of it, it's also the culture which is diminishing, which is just going to go away into oblivion. After, I think, after 100 years, our children will not even know that there are still some tribes in Nagaland, there are still some tribes in Amazon or in Brazil, because what we are trying to do is we are trying to bring everything to one level. So that's not going to happen, and it shouldn't, because everyone in their own way balances the environment. If the tribals are doing their bit, if there is industry is doing their own bit. Let's not try and push everyone out and put everyone into the working for coal mines and industrial growth. I totally am against that idea of growth. So let there be harmony and balance.
Yes, I mean, I just have been reading some very good article about, or a news item really, about Ecuador, where oil companies encroaching on the last remaining forests there, because there is oil in the ground, and
Absolutely.
then indigenous people are displaced, and
Yes.
I mean, it's absolutely. And where is that oil? The majority of that oil is actually consumed in California. So California is directly responsible for that cutting down of the forest in Ecuador. I mean, these issues need addressing. And I mean, that brings me to the next point. Do you feel there should be an immediate moratorium on new oil and gas explorations, while the present oil and gas extraction could be phased out within a decade, perhaps? I mean, we have to understand we are in emergency. How much we understand we are in emergency, our response will be accordingly. If we're missing that window, which is so narrowing down of cutting down, then the future will be not very bright.
Absolutely. I want to cite one example, which is of the Biden administration, what they've done recently. The largest ever sale of oil and gas drilling leases in the Gulf of Mexico have been signed just after the COP26. So what are the promises, and how authentic do you think we feel is all this climate talk and promises? Then ultimately, maybe someone who's saying it's blah blah is right then. Because you're promising one thing, you're doing something else. and the whole world is talking of no more, of this coal and oil drilling. And again, it's still happening. So I think that's why I said, let's not have any more of the COP 26, 27, 28 every year. We don't want this kind of a thing. Let it be virtual, save the money, put it into climate financing, help developing countries, put the money into solar or some creative energy. Because until you're just going to, spend crores of rupees in organizing these mega events, no event is going to help. So I think the right thing is, the development of new oil and gas fields must stop. Must. Even
There is a very
fracking, even fracking is, even in the
fracking is the
US,
worst. The worst.
it's the
Yes.
biggest issue in the US also. I know so many
Yes.
of
Yes.
I know so many of of these events and marches and protests happening there in California also. But I wonder how much is it, the government is being affected by it. I don't think so. People, it is still whatever. The correct is, the thing is that whatever big companies want to do, they somehow get about to do it. So that means the governments are, you can say, hand in hand with the decision making, because without the political will, this cannot happen. Such big decisions cannot be taken. So whichever government it
Absolutely.
is. Mhm. So I think,
Yes. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, because, but we have to also see that governments are very much funded by the oil and gas lobby.
yes,
So
that is
that,
the whole problem.
because that is a problem. But again, on the other side, we are electing these governments again and again and again. Perhaps it's time that the voters, the population, elects governments which really put, not just talking, but put things into action. I mean, there is a very interesting idea around. I don't know if you heard about this carbon tax and deposit scheme. What that, because it is has been researched that the top 2% of the elite, they have more carbon emissions than the rest of the world. I mean, that's, like you mentioned, private jets and so on. Their lifestyle has a huge impact on carbon emissions. So this idea of the carbon tax and deposit scheme is that there will be a carbon tax on various consumables and oil and jet fuel and petrol and enter. And that tax will be equally distributed to every single citizen. Not the government keep hold of that, but it will be, through the tax system, will be refunded back to the people. So that would then a level playing field, so to speak, and those who are an excessive carbon consumption and emission, they will pay more, much more. And those who reining themselves in and just have their minimal carbon footprint, they will gain from that. What do you think about that idea?
I'm familiar with a green tax. Like, we have a tax in India which is called the Swachh. That is clean, Swachh Bharat. We had this campaign called Swachh Bharat, means clean India. So there was a green tax imposed on everybody for whatever we bought. There was a green tax. So we've been paying it for a few years now, but I don't see any change in the environmental thing. I don't see anything. If I'm paying that extra tax on whatever goods and services I'm taking, where is it going? We still have air pollution. We can't breathe, right? Our river's toxic this year also. So if that kind of a tax was making a difference, it should have made by now. So if you are talking of carbon tax, I don't know whether it's going to make things more expensive for the poor person, for a lay person who doesn't know ABC of environment, who only believes that I just have to eat my bread and I just have to go from here to here once a week in a car to meet my parents or meet my sister. There are people like this also who take out their car once a week. There are families like that. We have all kinds of people in the world, right? And there are so many people who walk on foot and do their work. So I don't think I'm not, the policy maker to decide this, but as a layperson, I'm saying that why not have this kind of a heavy tax on people who are flying jets, who have private, private this kind of flights and aeroplanes. I have so many rich people in India who are doing this. There are actors, there are industrialists who are always flying from here to there. Even when they're coming to Delhi to meet somebody, they're coming by private jet and going by private jet. That's real carbon emission. A poor man going once a year to his village is not carbon emission. That is very, very negligible footprint. So I think we can't just say, that it should be equal for everybody. I don't think, in my opinion, I've seen the green taxation happening here. It didn't make much difference to the environmental change. So I don't know how it's going to work on the whole world project.
I mean, that is where this idea comes in. Carbon tax is not just an ordinary tax which the government then uses to do something for clean air or not. It's a carbon tax and deposit scheme. That this tax is going back to the people. The government is not touching that. So that means, yes, there's a difference. That means it's leveling up. So those who are using a lot of carbon and their lifestyles, nothing will come back to, or a very small amount. So paying more on the carbon tax than they're getting back. But the ordinary man who is using little and very conscious in his energy consumption, he's gaining more than he is paying. So that, or a carbon capital gains tax. So these ideas are all discussed. Interesting, at least.
So I think, as you're saying, that there is a difference between what is imposed, the tax that I just spoke about here. But if it is coming back to the citizens, still, I think, I'm not sure how it's going to be how the equal distribution is going to happen, because maybe a layman would benefit with it coming back. But whatever a man who's flying the jet, do you think he's going to be taxed more?
No, he's going to be taxed more because he is using more energy. So naturally, he will be taxed more. And someone who's using little energy, he will be taxed little. So and that is all distributed back to the people.
All right. It seems fair. But I think we'd like to wait and watch how it's being implemented and what is happening. Is it already functional in any of the countries yet? No. Or is it's only a proposal yet?
It's a proposal. It's an idea. It's an idea. It hasn't. So, yes, that's it.
Yeah. So when an idea is implemented, then comes the numerous challenges on the ground. So we'll wait and watch. So I'd love to see it happen, and what miracle it's going to make for the environment. But yes, it sounds like a fair idea now. If it's going back to the citizens, it seems fair.
Well, a carbon tax is inevitable to happen at one point, because that is only how the consumption can be decreased. Well, let's move on. I have one more, last not least, a question. Should there be perhaps an international law of environmental crimes against humanity on par with genocide, which could be then tried in The Hague in Belgium? It has been spoken. This idea has been coming up. And never mind of presidents, prime ministers, or CEOs of the big polluting companies will have to be responsible. For instance, it has been researched and clearly established that big companies like Shell, they knew for decades the impact of their business on the climate, but they lobbied and they put it in the best light just to make profit. That was not unknown 20, 30 years ago. Shell knew very well what will their oil extraction and burning of fossil fuels, what is the consequence? They knew it. So that is a crime. Or if Bolsonaro in Brazil is just pushing more deforestation in Brazil, shouldn't that be brought in front of the International Court in The Hague and prosecuted as an environmental crime against humanity?
Yes, I do believe that we need an environmental law, because environment, it's important because environmental crimes, as I must say now, they are happening so frequently all over the world, and they're going unnoticed. They are being, it's just an eyewash when we come to say that, oh, people are fighting for it, and so judgment has been passed. But we need a proper law, we need a proper hearing, because environmental, whatever, we are doing these atrocities, I may say, they are criminal to humanity. They are criminal. They are bad. They are criminal to the health. They are criminal for the future of the future of the planet, future of mankind. And look at the number of diseases which are coming up because of whatever atrocities we are doing on nature. We just stop taking no signals from the environment, and every country is fighting their own battles, for the challenges. Somebody has a water problem, somebody has a soil depletion, somebody has deforestation, like we have air pollution, a major problem. So everybody has their own challenges. But until and unless we have a very, very stringent and very strict law, and that where every criminal is brought to account, and it should be made public, it should be made globally visible what is happening, that should make a difference. Now what is happening, if there is something happening in one country, it's quietly hushed, it's pushed under the carpet, and it just disappears after a few months. So it's all hush hush. Then you go for another climate meeting, and you speak something else, and if something else is happening in your country. So I think we need a proper law, we need a proper maybe even a court to listen to this, and or everybody should be brought, brought into every crime that is committed in any nation should be brought to notice, should not go unattended. I think it's
Yes,
time
yes.
we need a law. Yes.
I mean, if that even one case would be judged and one case would be established, then our political leaders and industrial heads, they would take notice of that.
Yes.
And that could make a change. I mean, it is clear we need change at the top, and at the same time, we need the consciousness on the ground needs to also change. The whole paradigm needs to change. I mean, the science is very clear. There is undisputed what we are heading for. Not only our children, of course, but even within our lifetime. We'll see these things happening increasingly, and tipping points are reached, and the Arctic is melting, and all these problems.
Individual people all over the world. I'm connected to a lot of people who are doing great work, whether it's in Africa or England or US or Australia, New Zealand. So with the connection, we understand that there are so many, as you may say, leaders from who are working at the ground level. They are the real people who will bring the change. So that generation is increasing. Let's not lose hope, because that generation is increasing.
Oh, no. There is actually great hope. You are right. There is great hope. For instance, just to take an example here from the UK, now there has been a proposal. I mean, what a hypocrisy. There is a British government, and Boris Johnson is standing there at COP26 and wanting to be seen as a big climate leader. At the same time, they want to open the Cambo oil field, a huge oil field, for new oil exploration. But by pressure groups on the ground, as you say, local people over a period of time. And again, Shell, who was part of that endeavor to exploit the Cambo oil field, Shell has pulled out. So that means there's one company left. But the message is clear that Shell cannot, big multinational, cannot see any success in that due to environmental action. So a success. There are many successes.
It is, it is evident in history also that public opinion, and when a whole, some strong part of population, a huge part of population, there is awareness, whether it comes to even freedom struggles have happened like this. So I think it's the same story. Even freedom struggles in countries have happened like this. And so I think climate change is another kind of freedom we are looking at. It is freedom of the planet from all these atrocities. It is freedom of the environment from whatever foolish actions we are taking, or the industries are taking, or the political leaders have made it happen. So it's time that we look at that freedom. And I have great hope, because I see so much of youth awareness here also in this part of Asia, and I see so much awareness in all over the world. So I think the youth are really the change makers. I really bank on the young people of today, because they are the ones who are coming forward and raising their voices. People of my parents' age, now they're not bothered. They're 70, 80. They say, okay, the world is running. It's okay. It's going to finish for us. But the younger people see that there is a promise and it has to change, because they see a brighter future. They have hopes, and in their hope lies hope of mine. So I have also great hope and great faith in this generation to bring about the change. And of course, we are there with them. I'm like,
Yes,
people like us are there with them.
That's a beautiful message. This youth, Generation Z, this is our hope. She's going to be, I can very well see Greta Thunberg and others. There are very big climate activists and leaders in Africa and so on. It's not just one Greta. There are hundreds and hundreds of Gretas. There will be our future political leaders. So sooner, so better, because then things will change.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's a very good note to finish our talk.
I think it's a good note to finish, and may this conversation inspire more people to go green, go plastic free, plant more trees. I couldn't help saying this as a closing comment. And I think even dialogue of climate with more and more people, more and more platforms should be generated, so that it's not just one COP26. We should have our own COP 26, 27, 28 at every school, every platform, every gathering, because until and unless everyone speaks up, the change will not come.
Yes, again, another positive point. Climate is now in the mainstream media almost daily. That was not a year, 2, 3 years ago.
No,
it was not.
Not at all.
Now let's keep the conversation going. Okay, thank you very much, Kavita. It was very nice, wonderful of talking with you. And we'll talk again and carry on your wonderful work you're doing there on the ground. And we'll speak again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the time. And thanks again.